Hi everyone, welcome to the Brand Sisters. I'm Alexis.
I'm Claire.
And I'm really excited about today's topic because I think it's something it's so applicable to us, but I think it's really applicable to a lot of our clients. And that has to do with entrepreneurship in your 30s and 40s. And specifically, I kind of want to, we really help build strategy and foundational elements and like a plan, but I kind of wanted to take it a step back and talk about some of those things that are concerns for a lot of entrepreneurs in their 30s and 40s and really give some affirmations to anybody that may need to hear them today.
That sounds great.
Okay. All right. Good. And I hope that you can add, I'm 42, you're 33. So I hope that you can add like your insights and any thoughts from the perspective of a 33-year-old. Because it's been a little bit of a time since I was 33. Okay. So the first thing is you don't need to have it all figured out to start. And I think that one of the things as we get older, we become a little bit more of a planner, or we enjoy the security a little bit more, which is a good thing, right? That's like one of the assets of becoming older. But I bet if you looked back at your life about to the time when you were in your late teens to 20s, your life is probably a lot different than you thought it would be. And it's all worked out for the most part, hopefully, right? That you made it through, and it's probably so different, but it's worked out. And hopefully it's worked out even better than you could have imagined, right? And so I think a lot of this is the gift of retrospect and taking time to think back that it's probably different, but that it's probably all worked out. So moving forward, thinking about like, how do I do this? How do I navigate this? You don't have to have the whole end game figured out.
I think it's good to hear that because I feel like in your 20s, like any little hiccup feels like the end of the world. Part of that is just like a lack of maturity that you get through, like falling and having, issues happen. You realize, okay, like that didn't kill me. There's other ways to like succeed, or there's ways to move beyond it or whatever. But right. I feel like that is something that you don't really get until you've had some hurdles, which I feel like, you have some in your 20s, but especially when you get a little bit older, that's inevitable.
Right. Exactly. There's one later on that kind of is a note on that.
Okay.
So, okay. Number 2 is that each decade offers expertise and values. So like play to those strengths. I think that one of the things is we gain experience and social skills and relationship skills. We know how to navigate complex relationships. We know how to communicate with other people. We've had probably multiple different types of jobs. We worked with different types of people. Hopefully we also have an increased sense of confidence like at this point in our life, which is such a valuable asset that we're not questioning everything or questioning like what is it that I want to do, or like what do I value. Like our decades, like the 30s and 40s, really have some beautiful strengths. And instead of thinking about like the sometimes fear, I think, of not being young enough to start something, instead thinking about the qualifications that you do have in these decades.
I feel like that's so good to remember, because whenever we hit like a milestone like 20, 30, 40, I feel like it's always the negative that comes out. You know, like, oh great, I'm 30, that means I can't do like X, Y, and Z anymore. And now I'm 40 or 50 or whatever. And you're always thinking about like what's taken out of your life, now that you've gotten older. And I feel like it does not have to be that way. First of all, because you look around, you see people who are way older and they're doing like way cooler things than you are now, Like you're right, you become more equipped.
Right.
And I think like appreciating that and like really playing to that is, I feel like a lot of people, it brings so much more success.
Right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes just like pausing to consider what those things are. Thinking about the experiences that you've been through, thinking about how you've come over the last 10, 20 years, and pausing to really recognize those strengths. Okay, the third one is in our business, we have to do many different things to market ourselves, to build our business, and a lot of those things sometimes I think seem like younger things, and that's a huge hesitation. I mean, I know we've talked with a lot of different clients about that. It's like, oh, but I don't know if I can do blank, right? And it's just a reminder that you don't have to do all of the things, you can do things that you feel comfortable with that are true to your identity. So I'm thinking a lot about TikTok or Reels, right? And those are ways that people like use to market their business or their personal brand. And sometimes that doesn't feel right or feel true to your identity. And that's okay. Like, you don't have to be intimidated by all of the things that you think you should be doing and that people younger in your business are doing. You have to pick some things that are true to your identity and not be afraid. Like, don't let that be a hesitation. Although I do feel like that's a huge hesitation.
Well, I feel like too, especially, I feel like we have this in our mind that we have to like compete with that, you know, or like, okay, if they're doing that, then like I need to figure out how to, I basically need to like imitate that or copy that. And then it just comes off as like not being authentic. And I don't think it goes over quite as well. I think it is like, it works to your benefit if you're able to like tailor it a little bit, you know, and like change it a little bit so that it is within your brand. You are doing something relevant, but it's unique to you.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And I mean, there may be people in their 30s, 40s, 80s, whatever, that those things, they do enjoy the creativity of them. But I just think that alone, like thinking about those things shouldn't be a hesitation or a hang up for progressing in your business or starting a new business, pivoting, shifting, whatever it is. Okay, the other one that I wanted to touch on and a little bit further away is at this point, you've built personal and interrelationship skills that make people want to work with you. You have value. Like, you've navigated relationships, not just in a workplace, but on a personal level. Like, a lot of people in their 30s or 40s, they're parents by this time, right? They've been through just so many different types of relationships, and you have skills. So like, you have increased communication skills, right? You can be a better listener and a better verbal communicator. There's so many things. That is a very large asset. I think about some experiences that I've had working with some like people in their early 20s recently, and some of those experiences were really good, and some of them were really challenging because they were great communicators. And those communication skills work for you in the sense of like, you know how to work on a team. Like, you know how to communicate, you know how to navigate work relationship, not just the work part of the relationship, but the personal parts of the relationship. And that's a very, very valuable asset that I think should not be underestimated.
Yeah, and I think some people are naturally gifted at that, you know, where like you're 20 and it doesn't matter, like you are able to communicate and collaborate and whatever so naturally. But I think for a lot of people, that's not the case, you know. That's something that comes with experience and comes with just like working with like person after person.
Yes.
So I feel like that is, and you can tell there's a difference there, right? When you're able to actually communicate with someone and you're not just like talking to a wall, or you're not just, you know, your ideas aren't being heard or whatever it is. Like, there's something about like good, solid communication, and that's crucial for clients, right? Like, if you work with your client, like they need to feel like you are on their team, like you understand them, that you can like, you know, get their vision and then like, you know, translate it however you need to in your business.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, the next one is, at this point, you have more humility and more experience, and you are able to work on a team in a different way. So like, let's take that idea of communication like a level deeper. I think oftentimes in our early years, if we feel like we don't know how to do something, there's a lot of insecurity and kind of this like shell of pride that we don't want to seek out help because it makes us feel like we're not good enough, or that we aren't qualified enough, and we're really nervous about that, you know? And I think something that happens in your 30s or 40s is that shell starts to hopefully crack away a little bit, and you have more humility. You are able to ask questions. If you feel like you aren't as qualified in an area, you can seek out support to increase your skill level. You can do research. You can ask your leadership team. You can do so many things to grow as an individual. I was thinking about an experience with somebody that, like I said, that I was working with that was in their early 20s, and they wanted the success of the project solely for themselves. And I think the root of it was they were insecure that they weren't doing a good enough job. And so the insecurity was so apparent to everybody else because they wouldn't ask questions. They just wanted to take it and keep it here. But the success of the whole project could not move forward because of the insecurity there, and as opposed to like needing to seek out the help that like a team could have offered. And it was such an interesting reminder of that difference that sometimes happens from our early years to when we do grow in our confidence, but we also are like willing to let go of that false pride in a way to be a really valuable asset to a team.
I feel like that's something I'm still learning. Like, I feel like working with you actually has helped me with that a lot. Like, I feel like I'm still working through that insecurity stuff of feeling like, okay, if I can't do it all, or especially if a client brings something, it's like, I'm going to have to figure this out kind of a thing, or I need to like seek out, someone else who's more skilled at, that one, part of what I'm doing. Right. And feeling like that freedom to be like, oh yeah, it's not actually my job, right, to be an expert in everything. It's my job to like hear what the client needs and then get that done, however that might be.
Exactly.
But I think that that's something that I feel like I'm just learning.
You're so good at that. That's so interesting, like the way you said that. But that's exactly how I think about a lot of different things, is that there's like an end objective, and how you get there is going to be different for everybody and different for each project, but keeping that end objective, and like the end objective isn't my success, it's the project's success, right?
Yeah.
And I think, again, in our 30s and 40s, we see that more clearly, but it's the overall success, not just our personal success.
Yeah, that's hard. Sorry. No, this one's like hitting home a little bit more. No, it is interesting, like learning how to have that line, between the personal and the business. And we've talked about that a lot, that there's like, it's important to blend both, and then it's important at times not to.
Right.
But it is when it comes to something that like you're doing, like it's your craft. It's hard not to, as an entrepreneur, to associate and like tie your value to it, So absolutely. I feel like it does take a lot of maturity to be able to be like, okay, that's like that product, that thing that I'm doing is not me, like I do want to have pride in it and do the best I can. But if, there's something off about it, or it's not perfect or whatever, that doesn't mean like there's something flawed. Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's something that,
I think that's an area that we will always be growing in. And especially, I know you and I bring this up, and I was like toying with my podcast episodes to decide if I was ready to do this one yet, but about being a perfectionist entrepreneur. I mean, it's like that part of it is just always going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
At least recognizing it.
Right.
And
seeing the growth.
Understanding that. Yeah. Okay, the next one is you're resilient at this point because your life has not probably gone the exact way. And I don't mean that means that it's been terrible, but your plan has probably changed in certain ways, and you've had setbacks, and you've been knocked down, and you've had disappointments, and you're still here, and you've made it, and you've like risen it, and like resilience happens with age, as opposed to sometimes I think in our 20s, sometimes if things don't work out one way, we're like, oh, I guess that wasn't what I was meant to do.
Yeah.
Or like you just shift really quickly, and in a way you don't take it quite as seriously, but you just maybe it's just different. I think, like, I don't know about you, but I think a lot about when I feel knocked down or deterred or discouraged about something. I'm just thinking about like, how can I get up and move forward to the next step?
Yeah.
As opposed to just like, well, like
maybe I should try
maybe I'll just
else.
do something different. Like, so you have so much more resilience at this point. And so the discouragements, the setbacks, the ebbs and flows, the backs, the forwards, don't get you down as much. So
that's been a delight for me at my age, because I feel like that's something that was a skill I really don't feel like I worked at much, or maybe you just like don't think about it as much when you're growing up. But at my age, in my 30s, like I really see the incredibly deep value that there is in making sure that you're not that, like, because you know that getting knocked down is inevitable, like that's going to happen. But I think when you're younger, maybe you feel like you're invincible, like that there is a possibility that won't happen. But then once you realize, like, no, that's just life, then you have to build up that skill. And I feel like that's so important.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I feel like I was down for about 20 years. Seriously? So, but like, oddly enough, like, we're so different, you know, like, you did do really well in school, and like, you had vision and determination, and I was like the opposite of those things, but I still had a total ignorance to like, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, but it took me so long, once I started valuing like efforts and life and vision, it then actually was really hard because any setback would make me really discouraged. And like, so that happened a little bit later for me. That was like in my mid-20s to early 30s, honestly. It was very hard for me to be resilient because I felt like I had so much to make up for. So different ends of the spectrum on that one. But okay, finally, which is really my favorite one, is at this point, like, you know your values. You know what is important in your life. And those values and that purpose, I think, usually drive what you're doing. And you're not looking for those anymore. Like, you're not looking for, like, what makes me happy in life? Like, what are the things that I really want for myself? Of course, you're always assessing those things, no doubt. But, like, you have some really solid values. And everything you do can be driven by those values. And it's, I don't know about you, but if something is not bringing value to my life, it's very easy for me to let it go because I do not want a life that doesn't have value and purpose. And so anything that I'm doing in my professional career, I want to make sure aligns with my values too. So it's a very clear yes or no for different directions. And so I think that's like such a beautiful thing about like 30s and 40s, and my guess is as you continue to age.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like when you're growing up, especially in your 20s, it's all about like accumulation. You're like accumulating friends and experiences and, you know, anything that like the world could offer you. You just want more.
Yeah.
And I remember having some sort of a shift at some point when it was like, oh gosh, I don't have to do that. You know, like I don't have to keep up with that. Like I get to choose who I want to be in my life. You know, I get to choose like what kind of trips I want to take or experiences I want to have. I feel like that's freeing when you realize you don't have to do it all if you don't want to, you know, and like getting to simplify and like get to your core.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because it's like simplifying. I almost think of it more as narrowing. Because you're not going like here and there and this way and this way, which is still like, that's the beauty of being in your 20s. It's like getting to explore and build those things. But it's like, you know, moving aside the peripheral and being on a path that's narrower, but is still direct, you know?
Totally.
Which is an awesome and wonderful thing. So, yeah. So, I just hope that for other people in their 30s or 40s, whether you're starting a new business or shifting or adding another layer of success or like taking on more team members, like building, doing anything that feels uncomfortable, that you remember these affirmations. These are things I think that both of us are learning and working through, and that are like, I don't know about you, but 40s for me has been the best so far. I thought 30s were the best so far.
Yeah, it just gets better.
So it makes me so excited. And to also remember to invest in spending time assessing those values and those assets, not just reminiscing on the good old days or like what I could have been doing or should have been doing or what were the better things about those decades, and instead shifting it to look at the ways that you have value now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you can read the full blog post on animela.com. You can find us on Instagram,